Our speaker tonight is Julie Thomson. She lives in Durham, and her real day job is at Duke Press, where she works in marketing. Her memories of donuts go back to when she was 4 years old. In 2013, she began various projects about donuts, including audio documentaries, blogging for Our State magazine's food blog, Our State Eats, and she started her own blog. She also curated the exhibit, Keep Your Eyes on the Donut, donut shops past and present in Brooklyn and Manhattan at the Brooklyn City Record from December 2013 to February 2014. This exhibit received media coverage from the New York Times, The Late Show with David Letterman, the New York Daily News, Time Out New York, WFUV, and the NYI News Service. She tweets about donuts at Donut Girl. Welcome with me, Julie Thomson.
Thanks everyone for coming. I'll talk loud, I think that'll be easier. So tonight I'm going to talk about donut shops in North Carolina, but I thought first we should start to understand what kind of donut audience you all are. I'm going to name some donut shops in the area. Feel free to raise your hand for more than one, but I want to have a sense of what kind of donut lovers you are. All right, so who is a Krispy Kreme fan? Good turnout for that, all right. Monuts here in Durham? Wow, good turnout for that, excellent. Rise. There are a lot of hands going up multiple times. I thank you all very much. How about Brits Donuts at Carolina Beach? Okay, you guys all need to check that one out. It's really out in there. And then, did anyone ever go to a donut dinette? All right, so that'll be coming up. How about the donut shop on West Pettigrew? All right, so we're going to fill in some donut history tonight, and maybe someday you'll find someone who's been to one of those. Okay, who likes any kind of donut, wherever it's from? All right, so a little bit of a discerning bunch, but all right. So one of the questions that I often get is, where did donuts begin? And I'm going to give you over to someone else for an answer to that question. If you have those sorts of questions of the origins of donuts and all sorts of details about that sort of history, donuts go back thousands of years. Read this book, The Donut Book by Salet Levitt Steinberg. And then some other people have also commented how every culture has a tradition of a fried dough dessert. So let's just think, this is a really long history of fried dough desserts that we are engaging with tonight. The history that I'm really interested in is the history of donut shops. And that history starts in 1673, when a Dutch woman named Mrs. Anna Durham opened her first donut shop in New York City. It was located on Broadway near Maiden Lane, and that's really about all we know. But that was a big moment in the donut moving out of the kitchen. Before then, most people made donuts at home. They weren't something you could buy from a shop. And then also, donut recipes are found in recipe books a lot in the 1800s. But again, I'm not getting too much into that. Check out Sally's book if you want to know more. The first appearance of donut in print is 1809, when Washington Irving included the word donut in his History of New York. And then in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, a title you might be familiar with, it appears in 1819. So, when donuts start getting written about, they're being eaten and consumed, and put that together. But I think all this is really important because donuts kind of get lumped in there as they're the hottest culinary fad. Are donuts the new cupcake? And I don't think cupcakes, I don't know cupcake history, so maybe that can be a future topic. But these donuts, they go back hundreds of years. For donut shops, they go back thousands of years as something we've been enjoying. And I think part of the innovation has always been part of donut history, and we'll touch on some of the really great innovations tonight. I'm also going to talk a little bit about donut shops and donut kind of developments in New York City. And that might seem like a jump, but there's a lot of overlaps between donut history in New York and North Carolina, and it's kind of really amazing how those come together and kind of even inspire each other. And you'll kind of see that throughout tonight. But we'll start with, how did donuts get so popular in the 20th century? The answer, the Salvation Army. Did anyone know this?
Wow.
Okay, excellent. Your minds are blown already. The Salvation Army did lots of outreach and ministry efforts. Donuts they saw as this amazing treat to offer people. They made them in cauldrons on the war front during World War I. Donut lassies were responsible for those. And they also gave donuts to immigrants who came to Ellis Island. Wow. I think this is one of the most amazing things about donut history, because the very first thing that someone got when they came to the United States was a donut. Excellent. This is a great country. So, building on that popularity after World War I, were a lot of people. If there's one person who really took that, the Salvation Army continued to do things with donuts through World War II, and some a bit even today still. But if we have one person to really pinpoint as the man who popularized donuts, it's Adolf Levitt, who he's in the center of this photograph. Sally Levitt Steinberg, author of the Donut Book, is his granddaughter, so she knows what she's talking about. But he earned the nickname the Donut King. Adolf Levitt was born in Russia, and he and his family immigrated to the United States. He tried a lot of business endeavors. A lot of them failed. So at the age of 37, he moved to New York City. He had a little bit of money from his mom, and he was able to buy into a bakery chain. The soldiers coming back from World War I, they were craving donuts, and he was like, hey, I'm gonna make some donuts. So he moved his donut, kind of the cauldron he was making donuts in, frying donuts in, he moved it to the window of his bakery. And that was kind of this first instance of donut theater, an idea which he perfected. And Krispy Kreme also continues to this day. But he then realized you can only make so many donuts by hand. What if we could automate it? And so he worked and worked and worked to create a donut machine. It took 12 attempts. Donut machines are hard to make. Get all that batter through, get it fried, all of those steps. But he eventually, with help of an engineer, probably the engineer did everything, but he made this donut machine. He put it in the window of his donut shop, and then he also started a donut company. So he sold 128 of these machines in the first year. And so bakeries could have this machine, they could make more donuts, and therefore they could make more money. But if you can make more donuts, people can eat more donuts, they're going to become more popular. His first version of this company name was the Display Donut Machine Corporation. Not super catchy, but he gets better. And then I've got a few consumption numbers, because I think these are actually really interesting. In 1920, 25 million donuts were consumed, and that's $20 million worth of business. So Levitt, that's kind of where Levitt is starting with his business. He also created a mix called Downy Flake. And if you can sell a machine and a mix, then donuts are much easier to make. And there's this kind of quality control, and you don't need as skilled a baker to make them. There's lots of ways to make donuts, but this is the legacy that he built for this popularization of donuts. And so if you can offer this machine and the mix, it's complete service to customers. Adolf Levitt also opened the Mayflower Donut Shop. The first one was at the Astor Theater building in New York, and then he opened a location in Times Square. And you see these people lined up watching the donut theater. The machines in the window, you see the donuts being made. And this was the first national donut shop chain. So there were more of these donut shops all over the country. And so this really is where the donut shop takes off. And you see kind of donuts continue to grow in popularity from here on In 1933, Levitt changed his name to the Donut Corporation of America. That sounds much catchier. So, but you know, in the 1930s, after Mayflower Donuts opened, consumption was at 1.26 billion donuts. Just 6 years later, in 1936, consumption was at 3 billion donuts. By 1939, it was almost to 4 billion donuts. So, I mean, donuts' popularity is just skyrocketing. I think the figure of today is about 10 billion donuts, but someone should probably double check that out. Part of this too was that Levitt Levitt and the Donut Corporation of America were masters at publicity. And so they ran these beautiful full-color ads in Life magazine. They published all sorts of pamphlets and booklets, including how to run a successful party. There's lots of donut ideas to help your party along there. And then they even came up with campaigns such as October is National Donut Month. And then they had National Donut Week in March. But all of that publicity just kind of continued to increase the popularity of donuts. All right, so that's kind of the backstory leading up to kind of North Carolina donut history. So it's 1930s. Remember how popular donuts are. That's exactly the moment when some really smart businessmen start making their own innovations with donuts here in North Carolina. So first up, Krispy Kreme. You may be familiar with them, as many of you are. It's really easy to think of them as an international corporation these days because they have shops in so many countries. But Krispy Kreme started in 1937 in Winston-Salem. This is a photo of the original shop. It was a man named Vernon Rudolph, was only 22. 22! That's amazing. You can start in a really amazing business when you're that young. But his family had purchased a recipe from a chef in New Orleans, and he headed to Winston-Salem because he saw it on the package of a cigarette package and thought, cigarettes are big, I'm gonna start my business there. He paid $25 a month in rent for a space on Main Street, and then he bought his first ingredients from a nearby grocery. He started by selling his famous glazed donuts wholesale, and he'd sell them for 20 cents a dozen, and use his own car to deliver them before the fleet of delivery trucks. So just one of those, probably no logo. Then people started walking up and demanding donuts. So the story goes, he kind of punched out a window in the wall and started serving walk-up customers. So those walk-up customers could buy one donut for 5 cents or 25 cents for a dozen. So donut probably price increases are minimal compared to rate of inflation, but 5 cents, amazing. So the original donuts were also hand-cut, fried, and turned with drumsticks, and they were dropped in a wash tub of glaze. Again, this making them by hand limited how many he could do, how many would be, how much profit he could make. So he also tried to automate the donut process. The interesting part is he didn't buy Levitt's machines. He worked on creating his own. He worked on it kind of since 1938 on it. It took him some time as well. So one of his first developments was this friolator, which you see a picture of on the left. Yeah, donut names are fantastic. So this friolator in 1938 could fry 48 donuts at a time. He also created a foot-operated turner, because if you can turn the donuts over, that will make it go faster, a mechanical glazer, and then a proof box, which was where the donuts rise. So those pieces he had by 1939. The automatic donut cutter, 1959, and then the extruder for cake donuts. And you can still see some of these things totally being used today. The extruder was 1962. So by 1964, he had fully automated the donut process, the donut making process. Some of the first Krispy Kreme shops were opened in Charlotte and Raleigh. The first Raleigh store, which you see on the left, opened in 1939, at 618 North Person Street. The really cool part about this is that building's still there today. It is now home of Pie Bird, which is a pie shop, savory and sweet. So when you go to Pie Bird, and some people who work there totally know it, but you're going to the original Krispy Kreme in Raleigh. And then in 1971, Krispy Kreme just moved across the street, and this is the sign that's out front. And you see some of the modern design changes in that shop going on. So yeah, so 1971, the Raleigh shop that's in operation still today opened. Vernon Rudolph died in 1973, so soon after kind of the Raleigh expansion. And at that point, Krispy Kreme was purchased by Beatrice Foods, so kind of bigger expansion, becoming part of a more corporate conglomerate. But I think that was a bit of a rocky period, and so a group of Krispy Kreme investors worked to buy the company back, and that happened in 1982. In the 1990s, Krispy Kreme also had a big wave of expansion. Some of those shops closed since then, but it seems they're now in a point where they're expanding again. Internationally, nationally, and even locally. In 2012, Krispy Kreme celebrated its 75th anniversary. That shop that I showed you a couple of slides ago, this shop, now looks like this. This lovely dirt lot with a beautiful tree. But this is at the corner of Old Salem, West Academy Road, and South Main Street. But in 2012, they put this historical plaque in the dirt there. And so you can still visit and have the spirit of Krispy Kreme, which I think is really great that we have historical plaques recognizing donut shops. I love it. This state is amazing. The company's headquarters are still in Winston-Salem. They're located on Knollwood Street. And then the mix and machine facility is over on Ivy Road, so where they make the mixes and make the machines. Durham has never had a Krispy Kreme, but very soon we will. The date on the website, the opening date is to be determined, but this is at 3536 Hillsborough Road, so kind of near 85, yeah, coming soon. This was it on Sunday, I think. So, we can all keep our eye on what happens there. All right. Also in the 1930s, that's when Britt's Donut Shop at Carolina Beach opened in 1939. Again, though, we see another business person responding to the popularity of donuts, opening a donut shop. Also, Britt's just celebrated its 75th anniversary this past summer, so another amazing landmark. Harvey L. Britt was the owner of Britt's Donuts, and he opened it. It was originally on the other side of the boardwalk, but if you move, it moved to its current location in 1969. And when they moved, they took even the walls that the donuts are made in, the cutting board, so there's a lot of the old shop in the new shop. They still use the original cutter. This is the cutter that Mr. Bobby Nivens, who is the current owner of the shop with his wife Maxine, used to cut the donuts when he was a teenager and worked there in the 1950s. They used the same rolling pin until a few years ago, but it finally wore out. So now they have a metal rolling pin, but the original rolling pin is supposedly at Mr. Nivens' house on display. So our donut heritage is being preserved. But again, this is a wall front area, kind of right behind this neon sign here, where the donuts are being made, so you can sit at the counter and watch that too. So a little bit of that donut theater, even in this shop. Mr. Nivens decided to keep it the name of Britt's, and Mr. Britt was really pleased at that. Mr. Britt was ready to retire, so Mr. Nivens bought the shop in 1974, and he and his wife Maxine have owned it since then. For you historical buffs, if you're talking to someone in Carolina about Britt's Donuts, you're like, it was at Carolina Beach, and they're like, no, it was in Wilmington on Princess Street. I just want you to know that shop, there was a second Britt's. It was open from 1939 to 1956. So even he expanded kind of when he first opened, but we have one wonderful shop today. And again, Britt's Donuts only offers handmade glazed, original glazed donuts. They once tried adding a few other flavors, but this is their most delicious donut, and they've stuck with it. So you don't have to decide what kind to order. And you should also get a dozen, because you will. Brits, though, I should mention, is a seasonal shop. It usually opens at the end of March, and then it closes for the season in September. It has limited hours kind of on the end, but kind of Memorial Day to mid-August, they're open 7 days a week. So give them a call. They now have a phone number that you can check their hours. All right. So kind of building on this popularity of the donuts, in the 1940s, there's also another chain that is founded in North Carolina, and it's the Donut Dinette Corporation. This chain does not have the staying power of Krispy Kreme because we do not have any more of these left today. But I think it's a really interesting part of our state's donut history. It was owned by Alan M. Berryhill, who lived in there's a Charlotte in Michigan, and so I always get a little, in Charlotte. So Mr. Berryhill from Charlotte was the one who came up with this really distinctive modern design for the shop. Robert McCall was another owner. He was from Spartanburg, South Carolina, and Marion Callahan was also an owner, and he was from Charlotte as well. The first Charlotte location appears in the 1948 city directory. By 1950, there were 7 donut dinette shops in Charlotte. These were sold as franchises, and there were also additional donut dinettes throughout North Carolina, including one here in Durham. This shop was located on Main Street at 1006 Main Street, so this is kind of that empty lot between Not Just Paper and Fifi's, kind of near Brightleaf and the Federal, which I wish we had a donut shop right there. That goes without saying. But this Open Durham has a great page with a little bit of detail about the shop. This picture came from there. If we want to imagine what they look like in color, I have this image of a shop that was in Virginia. But again, they also had glazed donuts that they offered. You could see them being made right behind here. You could sit at the counter, these big plate glass windows. They had some other food as well. They were also served, these donuts were served hot, where we think of, oh, the hot glazed donut is a Krispy Kreme. But we were seeing that being done by Donut Dinette too. Maybe they were inspired by Krispy Kreme, I don't know. But these shops started closing in the 50s. So they somehow didn't quite work out the formula in the same way that Krispy Kreme did for success. The last shop in Charlotte was open until 1961, the best I can tell. But by 65, all of the other Charlotte locations were closed. It looks like the Durham one closed in the 1970s, according to what someone posted on Open Durham, but I don't know too much more than that. So, donut mysteries to be found. Durham was also home to the donut shop, which was located at 336 West Pettigrew, in the Haytie neighborhood, and these come from actually the library's website. What an amazing resource. And this, it was not just a donut shop, it was also a restaurant. They served breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they had a big banquet room known as the Jade Room. So if you say, oh, the donut shop, most people remember the meals and the banquets that happened there, not as much the donuts, but that was its name. It opened in 1948 and was owned by W.G. Pearson II and his wife, Jessie Logan. So this was on the same block as the Biltmore Hotel and the Regal Theater. And the Service Printing Company that was located in Haytie too, they're the ones who printed the donut shop's menus and their advertisements. Would love to see some of those. Maybe someone has some in an attic somewhere. From the signs on the counter though, and this is where we get into some of this overlapping history. If you see the little donut man, it's the Downy Flake donut man. So I think, the best I can tell is that this shop used the Downy Flake donut display system, the mixes, and made the donuts following kind of that legacy of Adolf Levitt's company. Downy Flake Donut really targeted soldiers returning from World War II. They had a pamphlet called "So You Want to Go into the Donut Business?" And so I think we can see, W.G. Pearson was coming back. He was kind of one of those people who opened up a donut shop after World War II. He had served in the United States Air Corps during World War II. Also too, this was only one of W.G. Pearson II's business ventures. He also went on to do some other business things, companies and various endeavors, but he also became Durham's first black district court judge in 1977. So, donuts can lead you to a path of great success, as we see here. I don't have an exact end date. Open Durham has a great page about the donut shop too, and it seems like the building closed down sometime in the 70s as well. So, there we go. We also, I think North Carolina, there's this layer to our donut history of all of the mills that were present. And so mills have lots of workers who can sell donuts wholesale to their employees. The mill will sell them. This is very true of the Sweet Shop Bakery, which is located in High Point. Again, we get a kind of post-war story of James Sloop, had been stationed in Topeka, Kansas during World War II. And he enjoyed some wonderful donuts there. When he got back to Howard Point, there were no such donuts to be found. And so he called that baker, asked, how do I make those donuts? The baker gave him the recipe. And he thought, hey, donuts in a bakery are going to be the way I'm going to support my family. He convinced his sister Ruth to join in, and with $1,000, they opened up the Sweet Shop Bakery. They worked all night, it sounds like, and they would make 1,000 glazed donuts each night before selling them to High Point's furniture and hosiery mills. But again, this is this handmade, intense process that's going on. The Sweet Shop Bakery expanded and had multiple locations at one point, but kind of in 1975, they opened this bigger Centennial Street location, and that's the location that remains open today. So they've switched a little bit more. Now their focus is a wide range of bakery goods, but donuts gave this business their start. All right, so in the 1990s, we see a trend towards gourmet donuts. And North Carolina played a part in this too. But first we have to go to New York for this story, and then we'll come back to North Carolina. But Mark Israel was born in Greensboro, and he is the founder of the Donut Plant, which is a shop in New York City that makes donuts. And he was one of those people who first used fresh fruits in his glazes, and he also fresh roasted nuts. So he was using different kinds of ingredients to make the glazes on his donuts. The recipe he was using for these donuts came from his grandfather, Herman Israel, who had 2 bakeries in North Carolina. The first bakery seemed to be only open for about a year in 1934, and it was in Burlington, North Carolina, so maybe also serving some of these mills. And then his second bakery was the College Pastry Shop, which was open from 1935 to 1965. And I'd love to find anyone who has memories of that. But Mark used his grandfather's recipe as the basis for his donuts, and he feels very connected. And even when you go to the donut plant shops today, you can see some photographs of Herman Israel's shop, and just kind of this credit of this history. It took Mark a while to refine this donut recipe. He worked in a Lower East Side tenement building. He delivered his donuts by bicycle to Dean and DeLuca and Balduzzi's and some other coffee shops. And it took him kind of 1994 to 1999. But in 2000, he opened the location at the top, which is 379 Grand Street. And then more recently, in 2011, this second shop in the city opened up at the ground floor of the Chelsea Hotel. So we have some North Carolina donuts in New York City. We also have North Carolina donuts in Japan. because the donut plant opened one shop in Tokyo in 2004, and then there are now 9 locations in Japan. So never underestimate the power of the donut to travel. Another little North Carolina tidbit, in both shops there are these beautiful window ledges with this donut pattern, and these were made by Mark Israel's father, Marvin Israel, who still lives in Greensboro today. And then Mark's parents also met at the college pastry shop. So if they hadn't have met there at that donut shop, Mark might not exist. So it's all donut shops, fantastic for so many things. All right, let's get to some donut shops you might be a little more familiar with. So this gourmet trend, donut plant was one of the main kind of popularizers and leaders in this direction. There were some others too, but I think really the donut plant did so much and has expanded a lot that we see a lot of new donut shops opening up today. Durham has also been a leader in this area. We have Monuts and we have Rise. And there's some other classic donut and independent shops, but I think these 2 shops are really trying to get at this mix of really unique, creative, gourmet flavors, but they're also keeping some good old classics in the mix too. In 2011, Lindsay Moriarty and Rob Gillespie started Monuts. They first started making their donuts at the Cookery, which is a great incubator sort of restaurant place where people can use facilities. And then they started trying to sell them by custom tricycle. That did not last too long because I think there were some aerodynamic things that didn't quite work out. But then they started selling them at the farmer's market, and they had repeated sold-out Saturdays, and that really built their company and led to their success. And being able to open the storefront that is at 110 East Parish Street today. That store opened in February 2013. And then just this past July, they announced that they signed a 10-year lease on the former Magnolia Grill building. So that's at 1002 9th Street. And that's really going to allow Monuts to expand and serve more people, which will be great. And they've posted and kind of tweeted some pictures of their construction. So I think I saw a post, the last was the drywall's going up. So it should be soon. They're hiring too, they have signs up. They are hiring for the new location. Monuts offers about 8 to 9 varieties every day. And some of these are raised donuts and some of these are cake donuts, and they rotate the kinds they offer in and out. They use also these fresh fruits in their glazes, spices, sometimes even bourbon and whiskey. Some of their regular varieties include chocolate chai, apple cider, plain glazed, strawberry with sprinkles, and chocolate with sprinkles, some of which you see here. They also have some signature flavors, such as toasted amaretto, summer snowflake, maple bacon bourbon, cocoa cinnamon, banana brown butter cardamom, hibiscus lemon, coconut dream, and lemon crumb. And we have, when we get to the end of the program, there are donuts from Monuts and Rise, and so you'll get to sample some of these flavors that I'm listing. All right, on to Rise. Durham is home to Rise as well. Tom Ferguson is the owner of Rise, and he really he started by wanting to open a biscuit shop, but he realized donuts would go perfectly with biscuits. And Tom was behind the development and kind of the conception of Only Burger, and he had sold that, so donuts were his next endeavor, and we're seeing the fruits of his research and development here. Rise's shop opened in December 2012. They did a lot of trials and tastings, kind of working things out before then, but they've been around since December 2012. And they're located on Renaissance Parkway over by South Point Mall, for anyone who hasn't been over there. They offer about 15 to 16 varieties each day, also a mix of raised and cake donuts, and they rotate flavors in and out too. This year they debuted a new approach to their menu, which is kind of a fun one, but it's old school, new school, and our school. So old school is classic varieties like glazed, chocolate glazed, blueberry cake. And new school has the donut hybrids often. So these include the crony, which you see being made here. You might have heard of the cronut. Lots of donut companies have been inspired by that idea of the cronut and come up with their own variation. I've not had an official cronut, but the Rise crony is quite delicious. So it's worth trying, but that's a croissant donut. So this idea of, let's try to mix up some things and make them a donut. They also have the wonut, the waffle donut, the dinoli, which is the donut cannoli. And then they have a flavor, they have like the creme brulee, which is a flavor developed by the donut plant originally, and also maple bacon bar, which if you've ever waited in line there, someone will always be talking about the maple bacon bar. There are school donuts are some of the signature flavors they've developed. Some of these include lavender glazed and pineapple basil. And pineapple basil, I would have never thought, that's pretty delicious. In July 2014, Rise announced the launch of their franchise program, so they might be expanding. There might be additional Rises in the future. And then also, too, I should mention, because I think they're on TV tonight, but Rise is on the Cooking Channel's Donut Showdown, and Monuts has been on there, too. So both of our kind of gourmet new donut shops here in Durham have received national attention, which is pretty exciting to be part of that. All right, one last donut shop to talk about. This is Vortex Donuts. They're located in Asheville, and we think of Asheville being this culinary leader in the state. Donuts, they've kind of been behind in town. So Durham, again, moving into that culinary spotlight. But Vortex Donuts was first kind of conceived as a company by Ron and Valerie Patton in 2012. They entered the Big Tasty contest. They won with donuts and had some really creative flavors that also play off some of the local things and use local ingredients a lot. Some of the flavors that they won that Big Tasty contest with were Paris of the South, raspberry goat. I'm not sure about goat cheese in a donut, but I'm sure it's pretty great. The orange peel, inspired by the music venue, and then also the Ring of Fire punchki. Some of those, the orange peel is definitely appearing on their menu. So I think that's some of these local shops, these independent shops can come up with a flavor that responds to the area right around them. So Vortex Donuts, they started kind of looking for a space, and that took a little longer than they thought, but they signed a lease on it last November. It is located at 32 Banks Avenue, and they opened on October 27th. So we are right up to the donut present, and these were some photos I've found online since I haven't been able to reach the new shop. But I just wanted to kind of maybe close by saying, I've only mentioned a few of the donut shops that are in Durham, but there are over 50 independent shops. So there are lots of discoveries to make, lots of delicious donuts to be enjoyed in our state. There are also about 9 seasonal donut shops. These include Brits. They also include duck donuts in the Outer Banks, and then some of the apple cider offering donuts were in that season. There are 23 Krispy Kreme shops in Durham, soon to be 24 with that Durham one. And I think, donuts are really easy to just think of as this new thing. But we see this rich history going through, and North Carolina continues to be a leader in donuts. So thank you for coming. First, and then you can have some donuts. Does anyone have any questions?
Where did this all start?
Okay, where did this all start? Excellent question. It started with a donut like this. This is a marble donut. This is the donut I remember from my childhood when I was about 4. I just have this really vivid memory of sitting at Anastasia's donut shop with my mom I would go with my dad too. And just seeing this donut, this beautiful striped donut with chocolate and vanilla, being served to me on this wax paper rectangle too. And I mean, I think donuts are really complicated. I think for me, in some ways, my mom, the home ec teacher, it was that she was not making this for me. But also I think it's maybe she could just sit there and enjoy it with me as well. She would say it was a bribe for good behavior. But there's something, and I kind of just started doing these projects. I was working on a certificate at Center for Documentary Studies, and so I was like, oh, I could explore donuts and kind of understand why these are important to me and why that memory is so vivid. So I did that. My mom also had this mug, which seemed really mysterious to me at the time. This isn't the best picture of it, but it has the phrase on it that says, as you ramble on through life, brother, whatever be your goal, keep your eye upon the donut and not upon the hole. Which is known as the Optimist Creed as well. But the funny part of all of this and delving into all of this, this was the slogan and the motto of the Mayflower Donut Shop. So kind of all of this research, I mean, this mug she got from a girl who visited her when she was in college, and it was like a hostess gift. And it was also like a really awkward mug, and it was just weird. But I love donuts, so I kind of really was intrigued by it too. So I think it's just really interesting, kind of when you start exploring anything that's important or vivid to you, other things kind of come up, and you can find out more about them.
Sorry, I
Yep.
I was a little late. Was Mayflower something you mentioned earlier? I was a little
Yeah, it was the first donut shop chain, and so it started in New York City. And if we're thinking of like in kind of the first ones in the 30s. So yeah, it was the first donut shop chain. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Where is your favorite donut shop?
Oh, this is a complicated question. I mean, I love a good fresh donut from most any shop. And I would love to try that, you know, and I think that's part of the adventure. You don't know exactly what they will have. You don't know exactly how it'll taste. I've come up with a list of top 5. I haven't revisited it lately. Donut Plant's on there. Britt's Donuts is on there. And then also Peter Pan Bakery, I think, is the closest, which is in Greenpoint in Brooklyn. But it seems the closest to the shop I went to as a child. But there's so many, like I love both Monuts and Rise here in Durham, you know, so it's so much fun just to have all of these shops. So, I mean, favorites are hard, but yeah, I do have a couple. So. Any other questions?
Yeah. Do you have a favorite donut?
I do.
Donut shop?
I am still tied to this marble donut from my youth. And that's also, Peter Pan has the marble donut. Monuts sometimes makes the marble donut. And that was really exciting. Their first one, they call it the zebra sometimes too, but they made it on a February when they were taking down the snowflake decorations downtown, but they had it at the farmer's market. So, but this combination of vanilla and chocolate is just top notch. Rise has made some kind of marble variations. So yeah, whenever I find a marble donut, I'm really excited. But I will totally eat other donuts too.
In your donut quest, have you run across peanut donuts?
Peanut donuts? No, tell me more.
Oh, Buffalo, New York, good for peanut donuts.
Oh, fascinating. Is the peanut goes into the making of the donut, or
It's
not
on the outside.
Okay, so that classic, yeah. And there's also, you know, potato is used in some donuts. Spud nuts.
Spud nuts.
Yeah.
I was Spud nuts.
Oh, absolutely. Next time you're in Charlottesville, make sure you check out Spud Nuts. There's some others. It was a chain too, but they use potato flour in their donuts. But I believe Krispy Kreme, actually, that's one of their secrets of their donuts. I think they use some amount of potato in their donuts too. So, yeah.
Rise did a peanut butter glaze. We made peanut butter glaze.
You are Will, right?
Yes.
We met when you were taking photos.
That was you.
Yes, with Anna. Sorry.
Oh my God.
You
Sorry,
used a peanut butter glaze.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, you know, yes, tell
I
us.
was busy talking to your friend more than you were talking about other things. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're talking philosophical things, not
Yeah. No, and I think we see I'm Julie.
Julie.
We see these kind of flavors kind of transporting around in these elements and these decorations moving between. And I think that classic peanut-covered donut has kind of come through in various ways. There's also this chock full of nuts donut, which was a whole wheat donut that people speak of. I think this was more in the New York area, but with great reverence. And so there's some of these donut memories that people are trying to recapture. Anyways, yes.
So I remember when I was in elementary school, teachers found you kids wrong in spelling basketball. And yet I'm looking at way before my time, donut was spelled D-O-N-T. Is there an official spelling for the word donut?
There are two ways to spell donut. And as Sally Levitt Steinberg, author of the Donut Book, and granddaughter of Adolph Levitt, says, her grandfather took the "ugh" out of donut. I didn't know this, and that's actually not quite in her book. I kind of used the shorter version just because I like it. It's also better for Twitter and social media. You have a couple more letters to fit in. So I tend to side on D-O-N-U-T. If you are writing for any sort of publication, they usually insist on the "ugh" version because that's AP style. So I think you can spell it either way, but it's an excellent question. Yes?
Do you have any connection to beignets?
So I have not, excellent question, any connection to beignets. I've finally been to New Orleans and have gotten to have beignets at both Café du Monde and then also the Morning Call coffee stand, which I think is better. And it's in a park that's even bigger than New York City Central Park. So New Orleans, so many wonderful discoveries to make there. I don't know a ton. I know those go back to the 1800s. I haven't delved into that history a lot. But I think actually beignets are part of Durham's donut history because Rue Claire offers them. And that's been going on for a number of years before we had, so many restaurants downtown. Rue Claire was a pioneer. And so you can get beignets there. But
Well, I grew up in New Orleans and we had the pleasure of having donuts twice a week. We had beignets on Friday mornings because I went to school in the French Quarter. We had to go to Mass at St. Louis Cathedral.
Okay.
So you go from the cathedral to Café du Monde for beignets. And then on Sunday mornings, my dad would always get donuts.
oh, fantastic.
Twice a week, the French with beignets and then the regular donuts on Sunday morning.
And I think some places too, this after school or, like where the donut fits in people's lives is really interesting too. So yeah, that's great. Yes, maybe we can have a talk on beignets sometime. Any other questions? All right, well, we kept you long enough. We have donuts from Monuts and Rise, so please enjoy, and thank you all.